The Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Forbes, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, we get the theatrics. We know we wait 650 days from the time IRS officials are aware of the abuses at the Internal Revenue Service until the Department opens an investigation. And then we say we can't comment because we've got investigations going. Saying I can't comment because of an ongoing investigation has kind of become the Fifth Amendment of politics for this administration. But I want to ask you not about ongoing investigations, but what you know currently today as the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the federal government. This is a picture. I don't expect you to be able to see it from where you are. It's Tyrone Woods. His father gave it to me yesterday. As you know, he and 3 other Americans were brutally murdered in Benghazi. Many people believe because we had inadequate security or we had an inadequate response. Many people are concerned, of course, of the manipulation of facts that took place after that. Yet this administration, to my knowledge, has continued to say that there was nothing the Secretary of State could reasonably or should reasonably have done to prevent those murders, and certainly she's had no personal repercussions. This is an individual I think you can see better. This is Brian Terry. He was brutally murdered, and so were about 150 innocent Mexican citizens because of Fast and Furious, which you've testified about here. And as far as I remember from your testimony, there was nothing you felt that you should reasonably have done to prevent those murders, and you've suffered no personal repercussions from that. Just a few months ago, we had someone sit right where you're sitting, John Morton, the Director of ICE, after we had the release of 2,000 illegal immigrant detainees, some of whom were being held for aggravated felonies, and we were basically told by the director that there was nothing that he should have reasonably done to stop that, and he had no personal repercussions. Now we have all this stuff we're hearing from the Internal Revenue Service where we see these atrocious actions, some against individuals who are simply teaching about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and yet so far we have heard nothing from the administration about what they should have done to reasonably have stopped these atrocities, and certainly no personal repercussions yet. So, General, my question to you today is based on what you know today, not ongoing investigations that we may never conclude or we may never see, or if that we do see, we won't have you back here. Just what you know today, in any of these situations, is there anything that you are aware of today that any of the heads of those departments or agencies should reasonably have done to have stopped the situations that I have just outlined that took place?
Well, I know that, Benghazi is something that I am not as familiar with, but I am familiar with Fast and Furious, and I will tell you that with regard to that, once I became aware of it, I stopped the policy.
No, I'm saying anything you should have done to have stopped them from taking place is too late afterwards. I'm saying anything you should have done beforehand.
Well, yeah, hindsight is always 20/20. It's always accurate, and it's an easy thing to stand up or sit up where you are and do that. I've got to run an agency of 116,000 people, and we do it as best we can. When there are mistakes that are made, we hold people accountable. We change policies. That is what we do in the executive branch. To the extent that there is fault, I have acknowledged that as the head of the agency, I am ultimately responsible for that which happened in my agency.
And General Holder, I appreciate the fact that we say I'm responsible, but when irresponsible actions take place, nobody has any personal repercussions on any of those situations. Did any of those individuals have any personal repercussions from the actions that took place?
Yeah, there were people that we held.
I'm talking about the head of the agency or the department. You didn't have any personal repercussions, did you?
I held people accountable.
You held people accountable. And let me just say why I'm saying that. Because in fact, you can't say anything that you should have reasonably done, the Secretary of State should have reasonably done, the Commissioner should have reasonably done, the Director should have reasonably done, if there's no personal repercussions. Shouldn't Americans realize that the only way we can stop these abuses from happening with the Internal Revenue Service from this massive amount of data they're going to get under the Affordable Health Care Act is to make sure that data never gets to the Internal Revenue Service in the first place? Because if it does and the abuse occurs, nobody's going to be held accountable at the top. And also, we're going to say afterwards there's nothing that we should have reasonably done to stop it. Mr. Chairman, with that, we actually have a piece of legislation we're putting in today to make sure the IRS is not involved in our health care decisions, and I hope we'll get it passed out of this House and hopefully the Senate so we can make sure those abuses do not take place.